Welcome to the SmartKeys podcast. Today, we are unpacking something that I think a lot of our listeners, professionals, managers, business leaders, might have a complicated relationship with.
Yeah.
We're talking about ethics. And I know the moment I say that word, some of you are probably picturing like a mandatory HR seminar
Oh, yeah.
or a compliance checklist, maybe a dusty philosophy textbook from college. You might be thinking, this is the stuff that slows me down. This is bureaucracy.
Right. It's often seen as the Department of No, the place ideas go to die.
Exactly. But we aren't talking about, just feeling good or checking boxes today. We are taking a deep dive into the Business Ethics Framework, Making Principles Profitable by Felix Römer. And the core argument here is, well, it's pretty counterintuitive and honestly quite refreshing.
It is.
Römer argues that ethics isn't a hurdle to speed. It's actually the engine for it.
It's a complete reframe of the whole conversation. The source material, it really challenges that common misconception that ethics are the brakes on the car.
It's the thing you slam on to stop from crashing.
Exactly. But Römer suggests a solid ethical framework is actually the steering wheel and the GPS. It lets you drive faster and with more confidence because you aren't hesitating at every single intersection.
Right, wondering if you're about to drive off a cliff.
Yeah.
I really want to get into that speed aspect because that feels like the real hook for a modern business audience.
Riz.
We're in this landscape where trust is, well, it's the ultimate currency. If you lose it, you're done. But if you have it, everything just gets easier.
That's the trust tax concept. I mean, think about it practically. When trust is low, everything is slow and expensive.
More lawyers, longer contracts.
Deeper verification processes, every transaction has friction. But when trust is high, when you have that ethical reputation, you move fast. A handshake can still mean something.
So the mission of this deep dive isn't to preach morality.
Not at all.
It's to hand you a map. The source material is designed as an operational guide for Monday morning decisions. It's about turning doing the right thing from a vague feeling into a repeatable business process.
That's it exactly.
So let's get into the weeds then. Before we can use this tool, we have to define what we're actually holding. The text draws some really sharp lines between what ethics is and what it isn't.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people mix up ethics with law. They think, well, if I'm not being arrested, I must be ethical.
That is the most crucial distinction to make. The source is very specific here. Ethics is not the same as the law. The law just sets the minimums. It's the floor.
So if you're only aiming for the law, you're aiming for the lowest possible standard of behavior that keeps you out of jail.
Right.
Which is not exactly a stirring company motto. We aren't criminals.
Doesn't really inspire brand loyalty, no, or employee retention.
Right.
And there's a practical problem with just relying on the law. It lags so far behind reality.
Especially in our world, in tech.
Absolutely. Think about AI, crypto, data privacy. By the time a law is written, debated, and passed, the technology has already changed 3 times. Ethics has to fill that gap.
So how does Römer define it then?
He says it's not religion or cultural custom, because those vary wildly. It's a set of standards and everyday practices that guide how people ought to act.
The text mentions 3 components: character, learned skills, and habits. I found that learned skills part really interesting. It implies you aren't just born with a perfect ethical compass. You have to calibrate it.
That's right. It's a muscle. You don't go to the gym once and say, okay, I'm fit forever. You have to train it. And that leads us to the ROI. The title is Making Principles Profitable.
Yeah, how do we get from character to profit? For a CFO listening, that might feel like a huge leap.
Well, it connects back to that idea of friction. When you don't have a clear framework, what happens? Your team spends a ton of time just debating gray areas.
Can we do this? Should we? Is this okay?
Or worse, they spend time rationalizing bad behavior because there's no standard to check it against. The text points out that clear standards reduce those gray areas.
And when everyone knows the rules.
You lower the cost of rework. You lower turnover because, and this shouldn't be a surprise, talent prefers working for ethical companies.
People want to be proud of where they work.
Exactly. And you drastically lower compliance costs.
So ambiguity is expensive. That resonates. If I have to spend 3 days wondering if I'm allowed to sign a vendor contract because the vendor's my cousin,
Right.
that's 3 days of lost productivity. If the framework says no conflicts of interest, period, I move on instantly.
That's the operational speed argument right there.
Yeah.
But there's also the risk management side.
Mm-hmm.
The source explicitly mentions that a proactive framework prevents that one visible lapse that can destroy reputation.
And in a world of social media, one bad decision is a global headline in 15 minutes.
It's not a local problem anymore.
Okay, so we've established the why. We want the speed, the trust. We want to avoid the PR nightmare. Now we need the how. The article lays out a core tool. It's called the 6 proven lenses. This seems to be the real meat of the framework.
It is. And I love these because they force you to rotate the problem. We usually have tunnel vision. We just look at, can we afford this, or is this legal? These lenses force you to look at 6 different dimensions.
Let's walk through them because this is the toolkit our listener can actually use. So lens number 1 is rights.
This is all about dignity. The core question here is, does this option respect the basic rights and dignity of the people involved? Are we treating people as ends in themselves or just as means to an end?
So to make that concrete,
Yeah.
let's say I'm a tech company. I have a ton of user data. I realize I can use that data to train a new AI model that will boost my stock price.
Okay.
But I didn't explicitly ask for permission to use the data that way. If I do it anyway, I'm effectively treating those customers as raw material.
You're treating them as a means, not an end. Exactly. You might be legally in the clear. Maybe there's some loophole in the terms of service.
Sure.
But you are violating their dignity and autonomy. You're using them. The rights lens would flash bright red on that decision.
Okay, that's clear. Lens number 2, justice. Now, this seems broad. How does Römer define it?
He breaks it down into fairness, specifically distributive justice. So it asks, who gets the benefits and who gets the harms? Are the burdens being shared equally?
This feels incredibly relevant to something like layoffs. You know, if a company announces record profits and massive executive bonuses on Monday.
And then lays off 10% of the workforce on Tuesday.
Yes.
That's a classic failure of the justice lens. The benefits all go to the top, the harms all go to the bottom. Even if the numbers make sense on a spreadsheet, it violates that innate sense of fairness.
And that destroys morale and trust faster than anything.
Almost anything. Yeah.
Okay, so lens number 3. This is the one I think most business people default to naturally. The utilitarian lens.
The cost-benefit analysis. It's very familiar. Which option yields the greatest net good? You estimate the consequences for everyone involved, do the math, and pick the winner.
But the source is careful here. It warns about the limits of just simple sums.
Right. Because you can justify some pretty terrible things with simple math. If I can make 51% of people slightly happier by making 49% people miserable.
The strict utilitarian might say, well, the net is positive.
Exactly. The tyranny of the majority. And that's why you can't use this lens in isolation. If that 49% is being actively harmed, the rights lens or the justice lens needs to step in and veto the utilitarian conclusion.
It's a system of checks and balances.
It has to be. They balance each other out.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Lens number 4, the common good.
This one takes a wide-angle view. It moves beyond just the company and the customer to society at large. The question is, does this decision support our shared systems?
You mean things like the environment, public safety?
The healthcare system. Exactly. This is where sustainability lives. You might have a product that is profitable and legal, but if the manufacturing process dumps toxins into the local water supply, you are degrading the common good.
You're extracting value from a shared system without putting anything back.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And over time, that just cannibalizes the very society you need to operate in. It's just bad strategy.
Lens number 5 is interesting. It kind of turns the camera around on yourself. The virtue lens.
The merit test. This is all about character. It asks, what kind of leader does this action make me? Or is this action consistent with the reputation our company claims to have?
I like this because it cuts through all the data. You can have spreadsheets justifying a decision, but if you look in the mirror and feel like you're betraying yourself.
Then you have your answer. It's about identity. If your website says we put people first, but your decision clearly puts profit first, the virtue lens highlights that hypocrisy.
And employees can smell hypocrisy from a mile away.
A long way away, yes.
And finally, lens number 6, care. This one seems almost contradictory to justice.
It creates a fascinating tension, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Justice is often blind. You know, it applies the rules equally to everyone. Care says, wait a minute, context matters.
It prioritizes relationships.
It does. It asks, who is most affected here and what do we owe them specifically?
So let's go back to that layoff scenario. Justice says, follow the standard severance policy for everyone.
Right.
But care might say, this person has been here 20 years and their spouse just got sick. we owe them more support than the contractor we just hired last month.
Exactly. And that is where the real work of leadership happens. It's navigating that tension between being fair, which is justice, and being kind, which is care.
There isn't always a perfect answer.
No, but you have to acknowledge both poles. If you ignore care, you become a robot. If you ignore justice, you become biased.
So we have these 6 lenses. We've looked at the problem through all of them. We're leaning toward a decision. But the source material says we're not done yet.
Not yet.
We have to pressure test it. What are the 3 tests Römer suggests?
These are the gut checks. They're quick, but they're powerful. The first is publicity.
The front page test.
Yes.
Okay.
Imagine your decision is the headline on the New York Times or the top trend on Twitter tomorrow morning. Not the PR spin, the bare facts.
How does it look?
If you'd be embarrassed or if you feel the need to say, well, you have to understand the context, then it's probably the wrong choice.
That's such a good rule of thumb. If you can't defend it in a tweet, don't do it. What's the second one?
Reversibility. Would I want this done to me? It's the golden rule, basically.
If you're the one being fired, or the one whose data is being sold,
would you accept the reasoning? It forces empathy. It forces you to sit in the other chair.
and the third.
Generalizability. What if everyone did this? This is the one that catches the free riders.
The people who think, well, it's okay if I cut this one corner just this once.
Right. But if every company cut that corner, would the system collapse? If the answer is yes, then you are making yourself a special exception. You're free riding on everyone else's good behavior.
That is powerful. It really stops that exceptionism mindset. Okay, so we have the theory, the lenses, the gut checks. But the deep dive is about application. The source material is very specific about how to move from theory to action.
It is. And step one is often the one people skip. Clarify facts and identify stakeholders.
It sounds so obvious, know what's happening, but in a crisis, we just panic.
We jump straight to solutions before we even define the problem. The guide says you have to turn unknowns into answerable questions. Who is actually impacted? Is the data verified? Are we assuming the customer is angry? Or do we know?
You can't make an ethical decision on bad data.
Never.
Then step 2, generate options. And the rule is, sketch at least 3. Why 3?
Because the human brain loves false dilemmas. We love option A versus option B, fire him or keep him, launch or delay. But the ethical choice, the profitable choice, is almost always option C.
The creative compromise.
Exactly. And you only find it if you force yourself to look for it.
I love that. Option C is where the innovation happens. So then step 3 is applying the lenses we just discussed. And step 4, which is crucial for being audit ready, document the reasoning.
This is your shield. You have to record why you made the choice, what data did you use, which lens was the deciding factor. If things go wrong, and they still might, being able to show a regulator or a board that you had a robust, thoughtful process is your best defense.
It proves it wasn't negligence, it was a calculated decision.
Based on the best info available. And this all connects to what you mentioned earlier about muscle memory. You can't just hand people a PDF of this framework and expect them to be ethical.
You have to run scenarios.
You have to practice.
The source also makes a big point that this isn't just an HR thing. It needs to be embedded in finance, in marketing, in data.
This is so critical. I mean, think about the context images in the source. Crypto, treasury management, AI regulation, those are hardcore finance and tech issues.
Absolutely.
If your finance team doesn't have an ethical framework for managing crypto, or your data team doesn't have one for bias in AI models, you are exposing the company to massive, massive risk.
It stops being about being nice and starts being about asset protection.
Precisely. It's about how you manage capital and technology. The text mentions empowering managers to speak the language. We need a culture where a junior developer can raise their hand and say, hey, I think this code fails the rights lens. And the manager listens.
Because they share that vocabulary.
That's how you prevent disasters.
And that connects to the broader concept of CSR, corporate social responsibility. The article uses a phrase I really liked: aspire, adapt, amplify.
It's a great framework for growth. Aspire means aiming for higher standards than just the law. Adapt means fitting your tools to local needs. What works in New York might need nuance in Tokyo. And amplify means scaling what works. If you find a sustainable way to source materials that respects the common good, don't keep it a secret. Make it the norm across your supply chain.
It bridges that gap between daily operations and those big, lofty goals like sustainability.
Right. Sustainability isn't just a glossy report you publish once a year. It's the sum of 1,000 daily decisions made using the common good lens.
I want to double down on that future-proofing aspect before we wrap up.
Okay.
The source mentions AI and data privacy as areas where rules might be silent.
This is where the framework is most valuable. If you're in a regulated industry, fine, you follow the rules. But if you are on the frontier generative AI, decentralized finance, the laws often haven't been written yet. You are operating in a vacuum.
And in a vacuum, if you don't have your own oxygen, your own ethics, you suffocate.
Or you explode. Without external laws, your internal ethics are the only thing keeping you from crossing a line that might not be illegal yet, but will destroy public trust.
The publicity test becomes your most important regulator.
It has to be.
It reminds me of the stat in the source about navigating new workplace laws.
Yeah.
85% of workers feel AI's impact. If you don't have a framework for justice and care when implementing those tools, you're going to lose your workforce.
Absolutely. They'll see the AI as a threat, not a tool. The source mentions the need for human oversight and transparency. Those are ethical choices, not just technical ones.
So, bringing this all together, what is the final takeaway? The article calls the framework a short, usable map.
I think the key message is that this framework links principles directly to profit. It's about being audit-ready, not just for a government regulator, but for the court of public opinion. It turns your values into a competitive advantage.
It's the difference between a company that says it has values, which is easy.
And a company that uses its values to make difficult decisions. And that usage is what builds what the author calls compound trust.
It compounds like interest.
Exactly. The longer you act ethically, especially when it costs you in the short term, the more trust you build. And that capital makes you resilient when the market shocks finally come.
I want to leave our listeners with a thought here. We spend so much time thinking about the difference between being legal and being illegal.
Right.
We spend a lot of money on lawyers to tell us exactly where that line is. But the real game changer for long-term growth is knowing the difference between being legal and being right.
That's the sweet spot. Legal keeps you out of jail, right? Keeps you in business for the next 100 years.
Well said. This has been a fascinating look into Felix Römer's business ethics framework. It's a lot to digest, but the source makes it so practical.
It really does. It takes the mystery out of it.
We want to thank you for tuning in to this deep dive on the SmartKeys podcast. If you found this useful, if you're thinking about how to apply those 6 lenses to our next big decision, we'd love for you to subscribe.
We're always digging into the future of work and the strategies that keep you ahead.
And don't just take our word for it.
No, the full article has incredible detail on the implementation steps, things we couldn't even fully cover here.
Absolutely. Click the link in the show notes to read the full article, Business Ethics Framework by Felix Römer at smartkeys.org. It is definitely worth the read. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Goodbye, everyone.
Take care.